everyone, thank you so much for joining me. So this video isn't going to be for everyone, but I mentioned in a previous video that my XuXu had passed, and some people expressed interest in hearing more about the details of my decision-making process to let her go, and then the at-home euthanasia experience. So, I totally get that not everyone is going to want to watch this. I've shown a little of XuXu in one of my past videos. I think it was a VR to Cosmic Creeper. I actually showed all three of my cats, but I can link that for you. But I'll show her in this video as well. So some background on XuXu. For those of you who might not know, she was about a month shy of turning 17 when she passed. She was suffering from liver cancer, and given her age, instead of an aggressive treatment like chemo or surgery, we just decided to medicate her with a topical steroid, and feed her as much as we possibly could so that we could get some weight back on her, because she was quite thin. Despite her having a healthy appetite, she was just still so very thin. And we just wanted to make her as comfortable as possible for the time that she had left. So while she did gain some weight back on the steroid, she gained maybe a pound or two, which was promising, and we were hopeful. She quickly plateaued and remained pretty thin. The hard thing about pets with declining health is that they have rebounds. So, some days they seem unwell, and then others, they act like they are perfectly fine, or, that they're not in distress. But overall, even though it's not linear, you still know that the trajectory is that they are, in fact, still gradually declining health-wise. And so that was a huge part of what made it so hard to decide whether it was XuXu's time, because on one hand, she had stopped grooming herself, and she was more easily agitated, and just had more periods of being lethargic. But then on other days, she was still her feisty self. She was loving her treats, still had an appetite. That was never really an issue for her. Still ate her food most of the time, up until maybe towards the end. And then, she still used her litter box. She was agile, jumping up onto places that she knows, or she knew she wasn't allowed to. So at that point, we were just taking it day by day. Then at the end of August, on a Friday, I could tell she was really sick. I was teleworking that day, and there had been some days where she would be lethargic in the morning, but then perk up as the day would go on. But on this day, she was pretty immobile for most of that day. She didn't want to eat. She didn't want to get up. She didn't really want to move. So I could tell she wasn't feeling great. And I had spent months preparing for this moment, right? Preparing for what I might do if I felt like her time was near. And so I called Matt, and we talked. I told him that XuXu was not doing well, and I told him that I was going to look into the in-home euthanasia service that I had researched. And he was fine with that. And so I called this place, and the woman I spoke to was very nice, very comforting, and she answered all my questions and explained all the options. And I decided to go ahead and make an appointment. She advised that I just go ahead and book the next available time that they had for an appointment, which was Sunday morning, first thing Sunday morning. And she said I should just book it right then because the opening would be taken pretty quickly. And that should I change my mind and didn't want the service anymore, I could call back as soon as possible, as a courtesy, as soon as possible, so that somebody else could take that appointment if they needed, because they were sadly in pretty high demand. So I made the appointment for Sunday morning. That same day, on Friday, I decided to do a tarot reading, just to give myself some further guidance. And I used a spread from this book right here, Sasha Graham, 365 Tarot Spreads. And the spread that I used was called the Pets spread. And I won't go through the entire reading with you, but I will share 2 prompts from that spread that really had an effect on me. And one of the prompts was, how is my pet feeling? And for that, I drew Earth Kitten, which is the Page of Pentacles. And this stabbed me in the heart, because this is what XuXu looked like when she was a baby. My thoughts were, she is no longer this curious, vivacious young thing. Her youth is in the past now. So she is no longer feeling this way. She is feeling quite the opposite. She's struggling. And then the other prompt was, what does my pet want me to know? And I drew this card, which is the 3 of Fire or 3 of Wands. And I started bawling because just looking at the image itself, this image of this cat looking toward the light, it immediately said to me that XuXu was ready. She was ready to take this last step of her journey. So I ended the tarot reading with a pull from the spirit cats. And this was the card that I pulled. And I didn't even need to read this description. I saw this keyword and I knew that I had to follow my intuition and follow what my gut was telling me, which was that it was her time. So then come the next day, Saturday, guess what? XuXu rebounded. She was eating, she was alert, she was back to her feisty diva self. And this is when Matt and I started having differing opinions about what to do. And it was a discussion that was certainly stressful, and it was a discussion that kind of went in and out throughout the day. But it wasn't, there wasn't any fighting. It wasn't anything, contentious. It was just from a place of love and of hurt and sadness and loss. And it was still hard. It was still hard because Matt told me that, XuXu was my cat, so it was my choice. And of course, XuXu was his cat too, but he meant that, I was the one that had adopted her. She was most attached to me. And so it's my choice. And, Matt said he would support whatever it was that I wanted to do, but that if it was his cat, he would cancel the appointment and just wait and see. And once again, this is all from a place of love. He wasn't trying to give me a hard time. He wasn't being judgmental. He wasn't trying to make me feel bad or anything like that. And it still did make me feel bad. You know, how could I not? It made me doubt my intuition. So I wrestled with it. I thought back to the reading I had given myself and the messages that I received. And I knew that XuXu's days were numbered. How much time would we have with her? Who's to say? But I knew it wasn't a lot of time. And so I thought to myself, I have to go with my intuition, because every pet is different. Every pet has their own individual situation and experience, and every pet owner has their own decision to make in the best interest of their baby. But for XuXu, for her well-being, my thought was, well, I'd rather be a month early than a minute late. I don't want her to suffer. So we just spent all of Saturday lying around with XuXu. Here are some pictures of her on her last day. So here she's giving her usual stink eye, but she's feeling quite well. She's just relaxing, in my arms. She'll always love napping with me holding her, or napping on my lap. Then here she is with Matt, and she's just hanging out. But you can see in this shot particularly, you can tell that she's stopped grooming. She's looking pretty not groomed. So it was just kind of startling to look back on this photo and to really see that. In the evening, XuXu ate her dinner and she started to feel unwell again. And so that's when Matt said, you're right. You're right, and I'm a selfish asshole. We definitely need to keep this appointment. And I said to him, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about you being selfish. We can't think like that. And yes, I am still keeping this appointment. So Sunday morning comes and I am praying that she is feeling well enough to eat so that I can slip her gabapentin into her food, which is just a drug that I got from my vet to make her mellow and loopy. Otherwise, it would have been World War Kitty trying to get a pill into her mouth. I was trying so desperately to avoid human bloodshed, and luckily she did want to eat, so we were able to avoid that. And by the time that the vet arrived, Dr. Abby, XuXu was pretty chill. And Dr. Abby was wonderful. She, when she first arrived, she took the time to ask questions. She said, I read XuXu's file, but I want to hear from you what's going on with her. And so she listened to me talk. She asked me some questions. She just observed XuXu, and she said, yeah, she's so tiny, and I can see she stopped grooming herself. And so Dr. Abby validated our decision. She said, you're doing the best thing here. She is unwell. And I think Matt needed to hear that validation. I really do think he needed to hear it. I certainly, it was a comfort for me to hear it, but I think Matt needed to hear it more. And it was even more meaningful because we knew she wasn't just saying that to make us feel better. It was clear that she was evaluating what was best for XuXu. She was assessing XuXu's health. And if she had thought that we were just prematurely trying to put her down, she wouldn't have gone through with it. And so it really strengthened our trust in her. Dr. Abby had us sign all the consent forms, and she walked us through the euthanasia process. And she told us that XuXu's ashes would be scattered on a farm in Deep Creek Lake. We had the option of doing a private cremation in which you do get the ashes back versus a communal cremation where XuXu is, her ashes are mingled with those of other fur babies, and we don't get her back. So we just opted to do the communal cremation. So the first step of the whole process was administering the first shot that would make XuXu just go to sleep. She would still be alive, but she would go to sleep and feel no pain. And so Dr. Abby instructed us to get a blanket and just kind of wrap it around XuXu so that, XuXu was facing away from us so that she couldn't really see what was going on, and that only her backside was exposed. So, that we had a hold on her, but we weren't hurting her, and she wasn't aware of what we were doing. And so Matt went ahead and handled that. And Dr. Abby was quick. She got that shot in and out. And I want to say in less than 20 seconds, XuXu was asleep. We spread out a blanket and laid her on the floor in the living room. And Dr. Abby placed a pee-pee pad underneath because it's common for pets in this state to, release. And Dr. Abby also said, XuXu's eyes will remain open, but rest assured, she is asleep and she is not feeling a thing, but her eyes are open and they will remain open until the very end. And after she's gone, they're going to stay open. So just an FYI. Then Dr. Abby proceeded to shave one of XuXu's legs, and she collected the fur and put it in a little plastic container for us to have. And I went ahead and bought this glass container. So here is a little bit of XuXu's fur, which is nice to have. I'm glad that I do have this. And then Dr. Abby also took her paw and made a paw print. And then she proceeded with the second shot, which was an overdose of anesthesia to stop XuXu's heart. Dr. Abby used her stethoscope to check XuXu to make sure that her heart had indeed stopped and that there was no chance that she was still alive. And she just said to us, XuXu's at peace. After that was done, she said she was going to give us a few minutes of privacy while she went down to get a basket for XuXu. And so Matt and I had some time to say our goodbyes. And so we were a hot mess by the time Dr. Abby came back with the basket, which I'm sure she's used to. And so she gently picked up XuXu, laid her in the basket, which had a beautiful blanket in it, and she tucked the blanket under XuXu's chin, so it looked like XuXu was just sleeping. And then she quietly took her away, and that was it. So the entire experience, while heartbreaking and painful and sad, it went as well as I could have hoped for. It really did, because XuXu, she was an aggressive cat. Vet visits were like the most stressful thing because, again, human bloodshed. I mean, she had a reputation there, so this really did worry me how this was going to go. And luckily, it went as stresslessly as it could have. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do an in-home euthanasia instead of having to undergo the stress of taking her to the vet. So I highly recommend that if it is a viable option, it really is a less stressful one, or it was for me, because XuXu was such a fractious cat. I mean, she was such a feisty thing. But we're forever grateful to Dr. Abby and other vets that do this. because I can't imagine doing a job like this where you're going from home to home and providing this kind of service. But she really did help us so much. And she sent us a sweet email following up the next day, and then a card several days after that. And she really was great. Like I said before, each pet is so individual and each situation is so individual. And as long as we have their best interests at heart and we are making what we feel is the most humane choice for them, then that's all we can do. So I wanted to end this video with an excerpt from an article that I found online that really brought me comfort. And for those of you who might be going through a similar situation like I did, having a pet in declining health and having doubts about whether you're ending their life too early, these words might bring you some comfort too. It's normal for your pet to have good and bad days toward the end. Texas veterinarian Dr. Fiona McCord, founder of Compassionate Care Pet Services, stresses that owners shouldn't feel as if they have done something wrong if the euthanasia takes place on a day their pet is feeling well. I would much rather somebody plan. We had a good day, went to the park, came home, had the ice cream sandwiches, and we let that pet go. Then to say, okay, let's play day by day. And suddenly I get a call. My dog is in distress. Can you come today? She said. It's okay to be a good day. There is no perfect time. No one will ever know the perfect time. Thank you so much for being here. Drop me a line below if you have any comments or questions, and much love and light to you and all the fur babies out there. Take care.